It is what you are, and what you are is your own self. So he liked the word self because the connotations of that are it's not something new or different that you go looking for, it's what you already are. He had a very low opinion of them. He never encouraged them. If they were occurring naturally to people who came to him, he would just tell them to disregard them, that they're just a distraction. You think, oh, that's new and exciting, and you run after them. But he said ultimately they have no benefit, and he never recommended that anyone search them or try and practice to get them. If you're having an experience of something, let's say you've got this city, seeing something happen a million miles away, it's still an object of your attention. It's knowledge that comes to a knower. So long as there's the division between a knower and something known by the act of knowing, he said that division is going to sustain the idea that you're a person, an individual. So the knowledge might be something extraordinary, which may be completely out of the accepted realm of ordinary experience. It might be a vision, it might be some knowledge that you think other people don't have, but it's still an object of your attention. It's something you've gained or noticed by looking at or searching for. He said that process of inventing an internal I who achieves a goal through practice, through study, and then gets the goal as an object, he said that's not going to get you to the point where the individual I no longer exists. He said you've got to withdraw attention from objects, and experiences can be very enticing, particularly if they're good ones. You think, oh, this is great, I'm getting somewhere, this is wonderful. But he said that's just another entertaining delusion that puts your attention on something that's not yourself. He said the only way to get out of the exit door, if you like, the only way out is to isolate the I, stop it playing with all these external phenomena, stop it getting excited by them, and go back to where it came from and disappear. The more entertaining things it can come up with, whether it's a vision or a city, the more likely it is to think, I, this person in the body, I am wonderful, I've had these experiences, I can do wonderful things. So your sense of being a person is enhanced by this, it's not diminished. That the way to make it diminish is to take attention off these phenomena, instead look at the one who has experienced them, the one who wants them, the one who sees them as something external, objective, find the subject, hold on to the subject, and watch the subject disappear. In Ramana's day, people got very, I won't say annoyed with him, but they would say, oh, you're just throwing your Brahmastra at me. The Brahmastra in Hindu mythology is a secret weapon that defeats all other weapons. And every time you asked him a question, he would say, who is asking the question? And so you never got the kind of answer that you wanted. He wanted to tell you that your question would be answered if you followed the advice and the procedures he was recommending. So people would come along and they would say, but what about my childhood memories? What about these great powers? And his invariable answer was, who has these memories? Who has these powers? Who is this person in front of me who claims to be a person who has a memory, who wants to have these extraordinary powers? He said, solve that problem and all your other problems are solved. So yes, you are right now, you're sitting somewhere in France talking to me, and you have memories of being a child, whatever your professional career, wherever you've gone, all your past emotions. He said, treat them all as objects in your field of attention. They are all occurring to, displaying themselves to a subject, and that subject is the I. When you say, I remember my childhood, I remember my parents, I remember going to this school, there's something inside yourself that seems to think that there's a continuity of this first personal pronoun, and that everything that's ever happened to you has happened to this first person pronoun I. So he said the way to get out of that particular idea is not to dwell on all your past thoughts, your past feelings, your past emotions, but to look at the nature of this thing that you've spent your whole life labeling as I, and see what it is, how it arises, how it functions, and ultimately where it goes back to when it doesn't have anything to entertain itself with. I think there are people who've had good experiences. They've got very peaceful, very happy, very quiet, and they think, aha, that's it. And they're just pleasant experiences which are experienced by an experiencer. The final state is when there's no longer an experiencer who alternates from one experience to another. The one who said, I had this good experience, has to go. This is true. There's nothing that you can use to frame it and say it's like this. Just everyone you meet who's got this state, no matter how good they are with words, no matter how good their mind is, they say, I can't tell you anything about it because whatever I describe isn't what it is. One thing that you do have is a sense of absolute, indubitable certitude. There's something about the knowledge that you've discovered, you don't gain it, you discover it, which you suddenly realize was there all the time, which is so incontrovertible that nothing else anybody says can ever dissuade you from this fact of your own experience, the fact of who you are. It's the best analogy is when you wake up in the morning and you laugh and you say, well, how could I have believed all those things that were going on in my dream? There's an instant of waking up that gives you an absolute knowledge of what's true and what's real, and an immediate understanding that everything that preceded it in the dream world wasn't true. So that there's a kind of parallel process. When you discover this substratum, there's a moment of, yes, that's who I really am, that's what's true. Everything else was just froth on the surface. It was an imagination that I imposed on the only true real thing, which is myself. What he would say is that there is something that's true, that's something that's real, and it's not divided into subjects and objects. It doesn't consist of individual people occupying bodies, looking at other individuals occupying bodies. He said there's one essence, one substratum in which all of manifestation is an appearance. He said the correct way of understanding, knowing this, is to be that self, be that Brahman, be that substratum, and know that everything that appears within it is indivisibly your own self. You don't see it as something separate from you. You don't recognize that there are individuals who function in this self-made reality, who interact with each other. He said once your own sense of being an I inside a body vanishes, then what also vanishes is your view, your perspective on what the world is. It ceases to be an assemblage of different objects distributed in time and space. It becomes somehow an uncaused manifestation in your own substratum, your own being, and that's what you are. So what Ramana is saying, that there's an overlay, there's a superimposition of an idea that you live in a world of things, objects separated by space and time, and that within that world there are other people doing things, interacting with each other. So you've created this overlay of what he says is just no different from your dream. You've created a projection which somehow obscures the source in which all this is coming out of. It's a bit like the pictures that appear on a cinema screen. He said it's like you somehow become associated with one character, the Tom Cruise character, if you like, and you suffer with the ups and downs of the Tom Cruise character in the film. You get excited when he's winning, you get disappointed when he's losing. And he said, that's just you have decided, I am this character in this film. But he said the film is just a seamless interplay of light on a screen, on a substratum. He said, when the movie is over, the screen remains, that which it's projected on remains, the characters have gone. He said what he's talking about is the permanent essence, the permanent substratum, the self, is akin to the cinema screen on which all the pictures are projected. But he said when the projection is there, everything has equal indivisibility, if you like. They're all pictures appearing to the oneself, on the oneself, and whether the pictures are there or not, the self is not affected. When the projectionist turns his camera off at the end of the show, you as screen, as substratum, are not touched or affected in any way whatsoever. You can only have that perspective, have that knowledge, when you cease to identify with little Tom Cruise in one corner of the screen. You've realized that the whole of the appearance of the world is a projection on a screen. You've stopped identifying with one corner of it. You've had a good look at the eye which thinks, I am this character in this corner of the screen interacting with all the other cinema characters. You've found out the invalidity, is that a word? The invalidness of that perspective. You've watched it disappear. You've discovered that your true nature is the substratum underneath. And when you identify with that, all of these other projections are known to be false and unreal. And you no longer think, this is me, this is my world, this is my drama. The idea of being a person is, according to Ramana, it's your idea. It has no fundamental validity. What for him is fundamental, true, and real is the substratum in which all these images of manifestation will appear and disappear. He said, your problem is that you have decided, I am this little character on the corner of the screen, this is me. I will buy into the dramas of this character in this corner of the screen. I will get excited when my little character does well, and I will get very upset when he gets shot at the end of the movie. But he said, that's just your idea. You've limited yourself to a particular portion of a manifest appearance, and by doing so, you've framed the appearance in such a way that you see everything else as other and different from yourself. When your perspective becomes the source, Brahman, then nothing that appears in it is seen as different from you, and nothing in it is different from all the other things that are in it. So in the Indian tradition that Ramana is based in, if you like, the idea of what's real is not the same idea that we have in everyday language in the West. So if I kick a rock, I say it's real because my toe hurts. That's not the Indian idea of what's real. So the Indian idea of reality is it has to be there all the time. So first of all, it must be there permanently. It has to have being, it has to exist, and it has to shine by its own light. Now that's an interesting qualification. So anything that depends on something else is not regarded as real. So in the same way that the light that comes off the moon is reflected from the sun, so anything that derives its being or its sense of existing from something else is not regarded as truly real. So it has to be there all the time, it has to have being, existence, and it can't be contingent on anything else for its continuity. So Ramana would say, and all the teachers in that tradition would say, the only thing that meets that rather narrow set of definitions is the unmanifest self, it's Brahman. So other things might appear in the unmanifest self, in Brahman, but you can't give them reality because they appear and they disappear. Because they're not there all the time, you can't say that they're real, but at the same time, you can't say that they're unreal, because when you have the perspective of being and knowing self, everything that appears in it partakes, if you like, of that same reality that you are. So what disappears is the sense that there's something other than yourself, there's something different from yourself, which you can then categorize as unreal. So the state of jnana, the state of knowing, is everything is your own self, but that not as separate individual people and not as interacting objects in a physical universe. Everything is just there, and you know it to be your own self. You don't recognize differences within it. You know it's all your own self. So it's real when you have that perspective, but it's unreal when you take a position within that manifest world and say, I occupy one little corner of that manifest world, and all of these other things I'm taking to be real, they must be real because I can see them. So Ramana is saying that perspective is wrong. You can't say because you see a tree, that tree must be real. Because you see another person, that person must be real. He said that whole framework, that whole overlay of projection is wrong, and you can't ascribe reality to anything you see because it doesn't meet the three core fundamental definitions of what's real. You can say everything is an appearance in the one, but when you are that one, when you are the substratum, then you don't recognize or see anything as distinct or separate from your own self. So you don't see anything as being something separate from you that has to be witnessed. You don't recognize the independent existence of objects or other people. You know them to be your own self. So when you say, are they real? When you see them as their essence, as the substratum in which everything appears, you can say, yes, they're real. When you see them as independently functioning objects, then from Ramana's point of view, that's not real. That's a projection you've invented for yourself. If you limit yourself to a particular form, then you have to defend that form against all other forms. So you're in a constant battle to maintain the integrity of that form, keep it healthy. You come into contact, into conflict with other forms that you take to be like yourself. You fear the ones that are bigger and stronger than you. All of these ideas are outgrowths of this fundamental wrong idea. I am a person who occupies a body. I live here. Therefore, I have to fight my corner. I have to defend myself against all other forms, all other people who think that they also occupy bodies and have to behave the same way. I would say it's not like anything. It's what's left when you've stopped making imaginary ideas about who you are and what the world is. When you stop all that imagination, what's left is what's true. You're simply disregarding all the things that you've taken to be real because you've never looked at them long enough or hard enough to discover their essence. This is a long topic. Rule number one, in my opinion, is if anyone's charging your money, cross them off your list of potential gurus. All of the teachers I've been with, all the ones I've benefited from, in their entire career, they never charged anybody anything ever. So that would, I think, automatically winnow out 95% of all the potential teachers in the world. I spent a long time with Papaji in the 1990s, and when he was young in the 1940s, he had this desperate urge to find a teacher. So at that point, he was a big Krishna devotee, and he actually had an ability to have visions of Krishna, and the visions made him very happy, but they weren't there all the time. So he wanted to find someone who could give him a kind of on-off switch, so he could say, whenever I want to see Krishna, Krishna will appear. So that was his rather peculiar criterion of the kind of teacher he wanted. He said, I went all over India looking for someone. Nobody satisfied me. Nobody claimed to be able to do this. And I came back to my family in Punjab, having spent all the money my dad had given me. He was very upset, but I hadn't found a teacher. But he said, inside me, there was such a hunger to find this teacher that the teacher actually more or less showed up at my front door in the Punjab. He said that Ramana, or somebody who looked like Ramana, appeared at his front door, dressed as a sadhu, and he said, I'm looking for a teacher. Can you recommend anyone? I want someone who can allow me to have these visions. I want to see God. And the man said, go to Tiruvannamalai, go and see this person, Ramana Maharshi. He took the advice, and when he got there, he said the same person sitting on the sofa at Ramanashram was the person who'd come to his gate in Punjab. But first up, he was very upset. He thought the man had cheated him. He thought the man had hopped on a train and gone back to Tiruvannamalai and sat on his sofa and waited for him to come. But then the people who were around him said, no, he hasn't left this town for 50 years. Whoever showed up at your gate, it wasn't him. But Papaji told me it was exactly the same person I saw sitting on that sofa. So he said, what I've learned from that, he said, there's two ways to find a teacher. The first is a geographical search. You can run around the world looking. He said, you might get lucky, you might not. But he said, in my opinion, if you want it so badly that nothing else matters, then the teacher will find you. He'll knock on your front door and say, here I am. I think you need a very, very high level of commitment and desire for that to happen. But he said that's the one guaranteed way to find a true teacher, is to want it badly enough. I just remember I was sitting with Nisargadatta Maharaj in the 1970s, and somebody said, why are there so many bad teachers in the world? And he laughed, and it said, it's to keep the bad students away from the good teachers. He said, look at my little room, maximum capacity 35. If there weren't all these bad teachers all over the world, everybody would be fighting to get into my front door, and there wouldn't be any space. So it's part of the arrangement that the bad teachers attract the bad students, and that leaves room on the floor in the good teachers' spaces. And you get the teacher you've earned, or the teacher who you think will give you what you want. It may be a good one, it may be a bad one, but that's the one you've earned in that moment.